I think that's got it. Uh, Welcome. Thank you for taking some time out of your Wednesday morning to join us today. My name is Duke McClarty. I'm the Executive Director of Groundwork, Housing for Arkansas. And today we have a terrific opportunity to learn more about community land trusts and land banks. We're thrilled to have Mayor Josh Agee of Paragould join us today. Paragould has one of the most active land banks in the state of Arkansas. They're doing terrific work, and we're honored to have the mayor join us and share more about their approach and their motivations. We also have James Yellen join us today, who's the Director of Technical Assistance with the Grounded Solutions Network. This is a advisory not-for-profit that works with communities to help them think about the housing side of land and community land trust, and we're thrilled to have them both join us today. Uh, we may have a few new folks joining us that aren't familiar with Groundwork. So just a little bit about the organization. We're a state-focused housing policy and advocacy organization that works directly with elected officials and stakeholders throughout the state. Currently, we're a team of five. We have just wrapped up a extensive road tour throughout the state to learn of the housing challenges throughout the state, and with an eye to the 2027 legislative session, where we hope to work on some legislation to kind of recalibrate the housing system in our state to produce more homes, to produce them quicker, and to produce different types of homes, especially in communities that have not seen that production keep up with their population demands. And also, as I mentioned, the land bank piece is a way to bring some new life and new development into these communities. We visited 9 communities between April and July this year. Um, and here are the 4 items that were present in virtually every stop we made. Blight and vacant properties in many of our rural communities have just taken over. And our local officials, our municipal officials, our county officials have very few tools at their disposal to bring these properties back into useful production. In many instances, investments have already been made in infrastructure. They're corner lots in downtowns of these communities, and there's no way for the local municipality to play an active role in bringing that property back to life. And that's one of the reasons, again, we're thinking about land banks and creating some tools that our local officials could use. Outdated rules and codes are abundant throughout our state. This is everything from zoning that was established 40 years ago and hasn't been re-examined since. But also, it's our fire codes. Our codes are calibrated to build single-family homes and large apartment complexes, and virtually everything in between has been regulated out because it's not easy to do. There's too few builders. There's too little investment throughout our state. So we're thinking of ways that we can catalyze development, encourage developers to go into these communities, but also thinking about maybe the building can happen elsewhere. So through a modular approach, the building could happen in a factory and then be trucked to these communities where the trades no longer live and work. And then there's a mismatch of housing types. We're, as a state, building large homes, and our average household size is just over 2 people statewide. There's very little incentive for the development community to build smaller starter homes, and we're thinking about ways that we can encourage them and use the regulatory environment to incentivize different housing types. Today, our focus is land banks, as I've mentioned a few times. Paragould's Land Bank has become a model across the state. Um, Pine Bluff is a community that is exploring land banks. They're learning about land banks, and this is a figure that stood out to me during our time down there. They mow 14,000 plus vacant lots in Pine Bluff 3 times every year. And again, they don't have the tools at their disposal to bring new life to most of those lots. The demolition process, the title clearing process are all areas that need attention. Our proposal for the next legislative session is focusing more on just authorizing language. So, creating a tool by which the state tells municipalities they're allowed to do this. And then we maybe in the future we'll look at the title clearing process and get in further into the weeds of what those barriers are. So with that, I'd like to bring James Yellen into this. As I mentioned, James is with Grounded Solutions. His bio was on my desktop, and I don't see it right now. But we're thrilled to. Hold on. Do I have it? I do. I do. He's the director of technical assistance. Sorry for that hiccup. Overseeing our support in shared equity and lasting affordable housing efforts nationally. James has spent his career working at the intersection of public policy, capacity building, and advocacy in support of inclusive housing and economic development strategies. James has served on several advisory bodies and boards related to community ownership models, including the Illinois Community Land Trust Task Force, and previously as board secretary for the San Francisco Community Land Trust. James holds a master's of city planning from the University of California, Berkeley, and is based in Chicago. James, welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for the time, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Duke. Good to be here with everybody. I'm gonna share my screen now, and maybe we can get confirmation that that's coming through okay for everybody. You can hear me loud and clear as well.
We got you. There it
Okay.
is. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. Okay, thank you. I will take it from here then. Thanks for the introduction. Thinking back on it, Uh, Berkeley Masters served on the board of San Francisco CLT. You might be thinking, who's this guy? What does he know about Arkansas? So I will say again, Grounded Solutions Network. We're a national organization. We work in all parts of the country. We have over 285 members in every kind of geography, economic market you can sort of imagine around the country. And our focus is on building healthy, strong communities from the ground up. Um, we do that in a variety of ways. So I oversee our technical assistance team. We do a lot of the most hands-on work with jurisdictions and local community-based organizations, nonprofit housing builders, to build shared equity and lasting affordable housing programs. Again, member-based organization. We do a lot of peer learning. We're always interested in hearing from different parts of the country, different communities to see what's working and where challenges might lie. Um, we address those challenges through policy and advocacy, both at the state and local level as well as at the federal level. So, always happy to have conversations about that, and hopefully from this experience, learning more about what the barriers and opportunities are in Arkansas. So excited to hear folks' responses in the Q&A. We do trainings frequently. We have live trainings. We have self-paced courses. We have a variety of resources that can be found online, as well as some of the industry standard um, sort of foundational documents to build community land trust. So I'll talk about what that really means in a moment. And then we also help folks through data management. We have a proprietary platform called Homekeeper that will help organizations. We have a lot of municipal users of that as well, that just sort of keeping track of that portfolio and making sure that it maintains its affordability and quality over time. So again, happy to be here. I'm going to be setting a little bit of the table here for Mayor Agee to really dig into what this looks like locally and in practice. So I'll start with a bit of an overview of community land trust, since that is the sort of more of the housing oriented piece of this conversation. And then I'll also talk about land banks and how these two tools can be very complementary and help each other in advancing economic development and sustainable growth. So, what is a community land trust? You might be asking yourself. Maybe this is new to some. Others have heard the term. It gets thrown around a lot. Uh, we think of community land trust within the context of what we call shared equity, affordable housing. Another way to think about that is lasting affordable home ownership. These are models that try to balance the interests of individuals that own these homes and are, have all the same privileges and benefits that come with home ownership, ability to control the home, develop it, modify it, however, pass it down generation to generation, while also balancing some of the community benefits. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but the key here is trying to maintain that affordability while also uh, creating more opportunity for folks to have some of the advantages that comes with home ownership. So the land trust model is just one example of shared equity home ownership, and it has a kind of an interesting origin story. So people think about community land trusts. These days, there are a lot of urban and suburban examples of land trusts, but the origin of the land trust actually comes out of a more rural context, and specifically, the first community land trust was founded in Albany, Georgia, and this comes directly out of the civil rights movement. So it's a direct response to sort of Jim Crow era land ownership and exclusionary practices that were very common in a lot of communities around the country. Specifically, Black farmers that were not able to own land directly, that were subject to discrimination in purchasing land, owning land, working the land, often in pretty unjust sort of sharecropping type of arrangements. And some of these folks got together with some of the civil rights era activists. You'll see the last name King here, and that is not a coincidence. These are direct relatives of Martin Luther King Jr. And they were looking around the country as well as internationally about, okay, what are some alternative forms of land ownership that can put the power and control of that land and use of that land and the economic benefits of that land into the hands of the folks that were actually working that land. And so they looked at models in everywhere from England to India to Israel to see what they can learn. And this is the origins of the community land trust model. It's the idea, and I'll talk about in a moment, is around separating the ownership of the land from what's built on that land and what's developed on that land, and then making sure that that land stays in the community and serves the community for generation after generation. So again, coming out of a rural context here, about 5,000 acres of farmland out in Albany, Georgia. But then over the next several decades, evolving and being applied to all kinds of different contexts from uh, dense urban communities to more sprawling suburban and everything in between, as well as, again, more rural communities. So what does this actually mean in practice? A community land trust, I like to think of it honestly as a container, just one form of developing and stewarding land for a variety of community serving purposes. Typically, it's a nonprofit, but there are also municipal land trusts as well that serve a similar function. They acquire and steward land and make sure that whatever is built on that land is benefiting uh, the neighborhood, benefiting residents for many, many generations. Um, Home ownership is the most common form of development that you see on community land trusts, but there are also land trusts that steward multifamily rental, housing cooperatives and condos, even community serving spaces like urban agriculture and community gardens, commercial space. We know that in many communities around the country, access to high quality and affordable commercial space to start your small business can be scarce. The key ingredient here is this dual ownership arrangement. This is sort of the traditional land trust, where the land, again, is owned by this entity, a nonprofit, whatever it might be, and any of the improvements on it are owned by, it could be an individual, it could be a group, but there is this split in the ownership, and that is bound together through the ground lease. And so the ground lease is going to be the thing that makes sure that any public investment, any private philanthropic investment stays in the land, stays in the community. All the conditions of that ownership arrangement are sort of stipulated in the ground lease. So that's a resale restriction to make sure that when after the first homeowner, let's say, it purchases a home at an affordable price, that next purchaser is also going to have the benefit of purchasing at an affordable price. That's all laid out in the ground lease. And so this is a little bit different than other forms of affordable home ownership, even where maybe you get a down payment up front and you own the land free and clear, or deed restricted home ownership, which some community land trusts do, where is a similar model of resale restriction, but the owner owns everything. They own the land and the improvements. They own the home as well. The idea behind the land trust with the ground lease, one, it's a more durable form of ensuring that affordability. So it's honestly, part of it is about being good stewards of public and philanthropic investment. A lot of other models of affordable home ownership, you make that initial down payment assistance or grant, and it benefits the first homeowner, but then the next homeowner buys it at market rate, and there goes your public investment. So the ground lease is a way to really ensure that the affordability remains for generation after generation. It's considered a little bit stronger and more secure than other forms of other legal instruments. So that's one of the real advantages, I would say, of the land trust. But I would also say there are land trusts that use deed restrictions. There are land trusts that partner with cities on inclusionary housing. So this can look like a lot of different things. But this what I'm telling you now is sort of the classic model, so to speak. And again, thinking about why we would pursue these models versus other, it's really all about, again, balancing that individual benefit and the community benefit. We know that community land trust home ownership, like other forms of home ownership, contributes to a stronger degree of neighborhood stability, resident stability. We see much, much lower rates of delinquency and foreclosure on these homes because you have that community land trust supporting the residents and serving as a backstop if the resident hits hard financial times or misses a property tax payment or whatever it might be. We see much lower annual move rates compared to renting. Um, Even if you have a resale restriction on the home, a lot of these programs still allow for inheritability, right? So the home is still staying in the family and passing down generation to generation and serving that same purpose of providing shelter and providing community and housing for that family. But then the balancing act here is, okay, when you do go to sell it to a third party, yes, you're still gonna be able to generate a little bit of wealth. Typically, land trust homes are the appreciation is pegged to a percentage increase every year or inflation or whatever it might be. So there is some stable price appreciation. You're also paying down your mortgage just like you would in any other home ownership scenario. You're getting the property tax deductions you get from any other home ownership scenario. But we're making sure that when that home is sold, it remains affordable to that next homeowner as well. And so I thought I would pull out an example of a land trust in a more rural setting. Again, land trusts, community land trusts, they are all over the country. This is an example in Chaffee County in Colorado in the Upper Arkansas River Valley. Coincidentally, different Arkansas, but Arkansas River Valley in this case. Um, so in Chaffee County, this is more of a rural mountain resort type of market, which you see in a lot of parts of the country where the local population, these are folks that are working at the working in the service sector, working in hospitality, in the trades, whatever that might means. And then you have this influx of visitors, of tourists that are driving up prices, buying homes, etc. So you have this significant mismatch between what the more modest, folks with modest incomes can afford locally and how home prices are starting to track to these higher price visitors or higher income visitors rather. So the Chaffee Housing Trust was formed to address that. And I think, Duke, you mentioned modular earlier. So I think this is a really interesting example because in a lot of communities, especially more rural, lower density communities, you might not have the builders there to actually do a significant home construction at scale, especially after the Great Recession. A lot of those smaller contractors folded, never fully recovered, unfortunately. So one of the ways you can address that, as Duke alluded to, is through modular building. And so in this case, that's one of the ways that Chaffee has been able to slow but steadily grow their portfolio. They're acquiring land, they're keeping it in the community, and they're working with development partners, including modular builders in the region and in the state that are building those homes off-site, bringing it to the community land trust and setting it on foundations held in trust. And so you're getting that sort of efficiencies of off-site and modular building, and then it actually helps bring down the price so they can keep it more affordable upfront. And so they've done this for, what is this now, 15, 20 years, going strong, slowly but steadily. They've done about 50 plus homes at this point, which may not seem like a lot, but in a community where, you're talking about a few thousand residents, that can be a pretty meaningful share of the housing stock. And again, it's not just that first home buyer, but you're keeping it affordable for sale after sale, generation after generation. So in this case, over time, they're going to be serving hundreds of individuals even with a relatively modest portfolio. And this is kind of reiterating some of the things I mentioned before, but again, how are they able to succeed in this kind of context? They have a lot of strong partnerships with developers. They're starting small, but they're growing. They've done individual single family homes all the way up to 20 plus unit developments and subdivisions. They have a CHODO designation, Community Housing Development Organization. It's a HUD designation that has added to their credibility, also gives them access to home funding, which many jurisdictions and counties around Arkansas might have access to support this kind of work. Um, and they've grown their footprint, right? So we're talking about a pretty large geographic area that it would be very difficult for several land trusts to serve that area. You don't have the economies of scale there in terms of staffing and administrative capacity, but they have been able to grow steadily and expand to a larger geography, which gives them a little bit more of that efficiency. And so we just talked about community land trusts. What does it have to do with land banks? Sometimes these words and terms can be used interchangeably, but they are distinct and not only distinct, but very complementary tools. And I think I'll try to move relatively quickly through this because I know we want to get to some of the real examples on the ground in Arkansas. Um, but the main point here is that land banks are typically public agencies. Sometimes they're nonprofit as well. They can be designated by public agencies to have some of these powers. Their function is to acquire, hold, and help revitalize the land and property that is typically rejected by the market or suffer from disinvestment over many years. Problem properties, tax delinquent properties, in many cases that are just languishing for years and years and really serving as an eyesore, causing blight, dragging down property values, hurting the local tax base. This is really about getting out ahead and bringing that land and property into a more publicly interested stewardship model, using a variety of powers, whether that be extinguishing delinquent taxes, clearing title, bringing in a tax exemption in some cases to stabilize the property, bringing more of a standardized system into the sale of those homes, so you're not just subject to bidders going wild in speculative auctions. And it allows you to bring in policy considerations as well. So, if a land bank's desire is economic development, they might try to hold off on selling those parcels and prioritize folks that have really strong economic development plans for how they're going to develop it. If the goal is we need to just get land back into the market, clear taxes, clear liens, generate tax revenue or revenue for the city, then that's going to be the approach. And then in some cases, and I'll give an example in a second, the land banks have been used as very close partners of land trusts to support affordable housing development. And there's a very seamless relationship between these two, right? So again, land trusts are about stewarding the homes and the land permanently. It's about the long-term operations of what's developed on that land. It's usually community controlled. You have residents on a board as well as professionals and politicians, municipal staff, et cetera. But it's a community governed model. And they use that resale formula and that ground lease to keep it affordable for many generations. The land bank, again, is going to be helping out at the beginning of that process to make sure that land is available and can convey in an affordable and predictable way. And so you can kind of think about it as a continuum. And this is a graphic that comes from the Center for Community Progress, who is a close partner of Grounded Solutions Network. They focus on helping cities and jurisdictions develop land banks and enabling legislation and strong policies. So I think this lays it out nicely. The land bank's serving at the front end of this continuum, acquiring, holding land, getting it prepared, uh, sometimes doing the dirty work, right? Mowing, clearing any environmental hazards, getting it remediated. They're going to prepare it for purchase or conveyance to a community land trust. The land trust is going to develop it, build homes, et cetera, bring in public subsidy, make it affordable, and then sell it to a homeowner that's going to live in that home for as long as they choose, maybe pass it down to the next generation, or maybe sell it to a next income qualified homeowner, and the cycle sort of continues from there. So we have seen a lot of great examples of land banks and community land trusts pairing up, both in terms of it could even be with regards to green space or just doing just beautification projects. Again, with the land bank sort of starting that process and the land trust taking over, developing urban gardens, developing community agriculture, helping build a pipeline of available homes for development for the land trust, which can be one of the main challenges that CLTs face is actually being able to compete on the market and acquire homes to develop. So we've seen land banks play a really key role in that early phase of building a portfolio for the land trust. We actually did a initiative a few years ago called the Catalytic Land Cohort, where we worked with partners in Atlanta, Georgia, in Houston, Texas, and in Portland, Oregon. In each case, we were working with a community land trust that was trying to find new ways to access land for their development work and find different kinds of public and private partnerships to increase the production and availability of affordable homes. So one great example of that I wanted to mention is in Atlanta, in the Atlanta metro area, the Atlanta Land Bank, the Metro Atlanta Land Bank and the Atlanta Land Trust partnered up. And this started, I want to say back in 2018, 2019, they started to have conversations. The land bank had all these parcels, needed to find ways to get these parcels out into the market, get them developed. Some cases, land banks can have significant backlogs, thousands of vacant or underutilized parcels they need to develop. The land trust is right there and saying, hey, we also know that the Atlanta Metro has a housing crisis and there's a very minimal availability of starter homes, of first-time home buyer options. What if we could work together with the land bank to set us up with a pipeline of parcels that we could purchase at a below market rate in exchange for agreeing to building affordable homes? And so that's exactly what they did. The land bank and the land trust developed an MOU, memorandum of understanding, to get on the same page about those shared policy goals. They did a pilot program where they set aside, in this case, 14 parcels specifically to see if this would work, if the land trust could really follow through on their commitment to develop them. That was a success, and they formalized this into a whole policy and program where they're now selling these land bank parcels at a discount to folks that are willing to develop them as lasting affordable homes. And so that's sort of the origin story here of one example of a land bank seal and a CLT partnering together. But this is a model that you could easily apply in jurisdictions around the country. And we actually worked with the Center for Community Progress to develop a sample policy that I'll share in the chat after I finish my presentation here. That you can customize, you can work with your land bank to set it up. And again, it's designed to help folks uh, build this pipeline of land that needs to be developed and housing stewards that want to develop it and make it into affordable homeownership opportunities. So I will end it there. I'm excited to hand it off to Mayor Agee to hear more about the work he's doing in Paragould. This is just a final slide on if you do want to work with us, we're happy to have a conversation and see how we can help in your community. Feel free to reach out by email. I'll put this in the Q&A chat as well. And yeah, thank you for that time.
James, that was, excuse me, terrific. Thank you for the overview. And there's multiple layers to it, multiple moving parts, but I think you really hammered home the importance of that lasting affordability.
Right.
And there is a layer of wealth creation, a layer of keeping that home in that household if they so choose. That's really valuable, and there's very few other mechanisms by which that occurs. Thank you so much. Use the Q&A function within Zoom if you have questions for James or Mayor Agee. We'll take some questions after the mayor's presentation. There's a few rolling in, but please feel free to use that, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Next, we have Mayor Josh Agee of Paragould. Mayor Agee is a graduate of Greene County Tech High School and attended Crowley's Ridge College. Josh was elected mayor in 2020 after serving on the Paragould City Council for 8 years. Since his election and resuming the mayorship, Josh has worked diligently to secure higher wages for first responders in Paragould, and as well as dedicating time and effort toward cleaning up blight in the city with bolstered code enforcement department and the establishment of the much discussed and referenced land bank that brings him here today. With that, Mayor, thank you for joining us, and look forward to your presentation.
Of course, thanks for allowing me to be here today and share hopefully some thoughts and some ideas that others can replicate and hopefully have some success statewide. You brought it up, Duke, in your initial 4 points that you had ran across statewide. And the number one thing that cities, I think, are dealing with is blight. When the municipal league has trainings on code enforcement and blight, the room is always packed. So we understand this is a problem statewide. So one of the things that I kind of give you a history of our land bank and how it all kind of came about is when I came into office, we had a lot of blighted properties. And in the past 6 years, we have condemned about 500 properties. Now, a lot of people step back and say, oh my gosh, 500 properties. But, these structures were literally on the ground. It was just piles of debris and rubble. And we saw that as a blight problem. It was a problem for code enforcement, our police department, and then, of course, the neighbors and in those neighborhoods, the diminished property values. So we really started trying to clean up areas of town that had been neglected for years. And we've had pretty good success with that. I can say that we have not displaced one resident in those condemnations. None of those structures, they were all vacant. So what we ended up with was a lot of vacant lots. Now, a lot of those lots were turned around and sold by the landowner, and some redevelopment was starting to happen. But we really looked at it like, code enforcement 1.0 was cleaning up the mess. And then what does the next step look like? What does code enforcement 2.0 look like? And that was redevelopment. So I had the opportunity to visit a couple of cities across the country. I visited with the chamber in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and then also took a week-long tour in Kentucky of a city that was having some success with land banks. So I kind of came back from those trips and was excited about the idea of a land bank. And to coincide with that trip, Paragould was actually doing a 20-year strategic plan. It was Paragould 2042. And in those discussions, this land bank idea started to happen. And it was just kind of an organic thing where people were like, we have all these vacant lots. Surely we can redevelop them, build starter homes, build affordable housing, get these lots, get a new home built, and get that put back into our inventory. As you know, across the state, housing is an ongoing discussion. So we established the Paragould Land Bank. The second slide will show you our mission statement. Number one, this is the three people that. So the first slide there is myself, and then Allison Heston's our economic development director, and then Tara Sexton is our grant writer, and she's also the secretary for our land bank. Tara and Allison have been instrumental in laying the groundwork for making sure that our land bank was successful and that we kind of checked all the boxes. Tara and Allison did a huge amount of research on other land banks, setting up the ordinances and making sure that all the processes were put into place. The next slide will show our mission statement, which is simply to stabilize and revitalize abandoned properties. Our idea was to really go into these neighborhoods and help the landowners that are still in these areas to improve their property values, to make their neighborhoods what they once were. You know, in Paragould, we have 3 overlay districts, and we have termed those areas as legacy neighborhoods. I think when you look around the state, you'll notice that the majority of the blight is in the older parts of town, you know, our inheritance, if you will. So we've really started to look at this like, you know, if you look at other cities around the state, downtowns are always an opportunity for investment. People want to invest in downtown and make their downtown something to visit and to see. And we have seen over the past 10 years a huge revitalization in downtown Paragould. So we started to think like, well, if this can happen downtown, it can happen in these legacy neighborhoods, these neighborhoods that essentially built Paragould. And, you know, so we felt like being good stewards of our legacy neighborhoods went hand in hand with the revitalization of downtown. So one of the very first things we did was we took a map and we looked at the areas of blight and opportunity, and we established 3 overlay districts. You can see them on the map. The yellow is our downtown core. And then on the top of the screen, you have the North End district. On the right side, you have the Labor Park district. And then on the left, you have the purple Midtown district. If you'll notice, the green outline kind of at the top of the screen is our 8 Mile Creek Trail. So that trail connects to the majority of our parks. It connects to a junior high, Paragould Junior High, Paragould Senior High, our Mission Outreach, which is our homeless outreach program, and along with our fire department. So we really felt like taking that into consideration was vital for the success of our land bank. The north end, you'll notice it connects to downtown, and then on the other end of it, it has a park. Labor District is the same way. It connects to downtown and has a park on the side. Those are all connected by the trail as well. And then our Midtown District is a little bit different. Midtown didn't have a lot of blight, but had a lot of older homes and that had been well kept. And we wanted to kind of look at that as a model of what we hope that North End and Labor will eventually become. And the Midtown did have a few infrastructure things like sidewalks and curbs and gutter and stuff that we needed to do. So we went ahead and took that in as an overlay district as more of a preservation tool instead of a redevelopment tool. So the next slide we'll kind of go into the Paragould 2042 plan that I spoke on earlier. This was about an 18-month process that we haven't, in Paragould, we hadn't done a 20-year strategic plan since 2000. And we really felt like when I came into office in 21, we really felt like we needed a long-term vision for our city, what we needed to do. So the next slide will show, the next 2 slides will show all the public input. So in development of this plan, we had leaders, we had business folks from the community. We opened it up and really tried to get everyone in the community to come in, talk about Paragould, talk about our challenges, talk about our opportunities, and lay out a vision for what our citizens wanted for the next 20 years so we could put a plan together and really start to put practices in place to check those boxes off. And we have a checklist, and I'll say that we're about 4 years into that plan, and we're already 60% of the way through it. One of the key pieces of that puzzle or of that plan was redevelopment. As you can see, we laid out maps. We identified areas that needed to be redeveloped, and that input actually went directly into the 3 overlay districts that we spoke about earlier. During that plan, the next slide will show you that in our North End area, the 20-year plan, the people that our consultants that put that together identified 48 vacant lots in that North End area. This shows those empty lots. The green is one of our largest parks. On the south end, you can't see that, but it's connected to downtown. And we really felt like this was a huge opportunity. We're seeing more and more that affordable housing is something people want, they need. And then also young families are wanting to be close to downtown. They want to be close to a park. They don't necessarily want a huge lot that they're spending their entire weekend maintaining. They value experiences over things a lot of times. So to have a smaller lot that they can essentially mow in an hour instead of an entire weekend, and then spend the rest of that time with their family and get out and enjoy our parks or enjoy amenities downtown, is a huge selling point for those younger families. So we've focused our efforts on this one area to begin with. What we didn't want to do was start acquiring lots, kind of a few here in this North End district and a few in another. We really wanted to concentrate. Let's put all of our efforts into one area, and let's try our very best to make it a success, and show that this is going to work as we continue to go into these other areas. So let's talk really quick. The next slide, we'll talk about our establishment. So what does it take to establish a land bank? So we took this idea to the city council. We looked at legislation from other areas all over the country. As Duke mentioned earlier, land banks there are 4, I believe, in the state of Arkansas. I think we're a little bit unique when you look at a couple of those land banks are more geared toward preservation, where we were more geared toward revitalization and cleaning these lots up and putting them back into our inventory and creating housing. So we drafted the legislation. It was passed. And then when we set out the commissioners, we had 5 commissioners. And one of the things that we really wanted to make sure is that we continued that public input idea. So we have representation from banking, which we felt was important because, someone who's connected to a financing arm, they understand the financing for first-time homeowners. They understand the CRA programs that banks have, all the nuances of financing. We felt like having a builder, we can't do this without our builders. The city can go out here and clean up all these lots and get everything ready. But if we don't have buy-in from the builders and that community of folks, then we're just going to end up with lots that we continue to mow. So having not only a builder on the commissioner, as a commissioner, but also realizing when they come to these land bank auctions that we get up at the auctions and we say, look, we're a partner with you guys. We're gonna ensure this succeeds by infrastructure investments and different things that the city's going to do to help improve the neighborhood. We have a council member on the Land Bank Commission just for oversight. The council wanted to ensure that they had a representation on that board. Paragould is a little bit unique. We're one of, I think, 14 cities in the state of Arkansas. We own our own utility. So if you live in Paragould, your water, sewer, internet, cable TV, all of everything except for your cell phone and gas service is provided by the city. So we felt like having representation from Paragould Municipal Utilities was vital when it comes to making sure that these homes have access to all the infrastructure as far as water and sewer and internet, and keeping them abreast of what is going on and making sure that we don't run into any unforeseen challenges. And then also we have an at-large member. That at-large member in Paragould happens to be an attorney. So while she does not give legal advice to the land bank, it is nice to have her because she brings a legal perspective and makes sure that we stay within the parameters and stay legal and try to do everything that we can to help people. So it's always nice to have someone with that expertise on the commission as well. So the next slide are what we have established as what does it take to establish a land bank, and where you start is crucial. I talked about trying to focus our efforts in one area, and really Tara, our grant writer, came up with the 3 Ps: parcels, proximity, and potential. The parcels piece really came about actually the builder who is on our commission sat down with me when we first started, kind of floated this idea. And he said, I don't think it'll work because you can't go in this area where there are the 48 lots and build a $150,000 or $175,000 home. They're just not going to sell. And we started looking at, and we started having discussions with him. And I said, what if we were able to purchase 17 or 20 lots, and we had, instead of one home going up at $150,000, what if we had 20? Then you've really started to change the momentum of an entire neighborhood. You've got buy-in from the landowners that are there because they see all the new things that are coming to an area that really have been forgotten in a lot of ways. And also you're sharing the responsibility, the financial responsibility with other builders. You know, one builder is not going to go in and build 20 homes, not in Paragould anyway. So having all those parcels together, we were able to go in and make a significant show with a lot of different builders and all kind of bringing their own expertise. And they all knew that they were in it together and the city was there with them. Proximity. We talked earlier about the 8 Mile Creek Trail, the amenities as far as downtown and the parks, and all the things. So we looked at both of those pieces. Like, we have the proximity, we have all the amenities that young homeowners are going to want. We have the parcels all in one place. So we have builders getting together and doing this together with the city. And then that essentially led to the potential that we have seen in that area. So that's why we actually chose the North End district to begin with. The next slide is going to show the revenue. So one of the great things we had, so in the North End district, we actually were able to purchase 17 lots off of an individual. He had 17 empty pieces of property. We met with him and he shot us a price, and we worked through the council and we were able to buy those 17 lots. We turned around and we had an auction where we got up, and it was the first auction. So we had a lot of builders, a lot of interest, a lot of questions. So we met with all the builders before the auction, you know, for about 30 minutes, kind of went over our goals, our vision for this area, what we wanted to see. And our first land bank was a huge success. Now, the average lot that sold that day was only $9,000. In Paragould, most building lots are bringing 35 to 50. So you can see where a $9,000 lot was a huge incentive for them to build there, because they're already $20,000, $30,000 less of an investment, and they've got the property. One of the things that we talked about when I was visiting with the gentleman who was telling me that he didn't think it would work at first, who's actually on the commission now, was the idea, and I think Duke touched on this earlier, if you go out and you purchase a 20-acre field and you're going to develop it for housing and put a subdivision in, you have to put all the infrastructure in place. And with these lots, all that was already there. So you already had your sewer, your water, your streets, your alley access in a lot of these areas. All that was already in place. So that lowers the barrier for those builders. So after we had our first land bank auction, our city attorney called me and he said, do you know who the biggest winner today was? And I said, no, I don't know. I thought it was the city and maybe that area, those landowners over there. And he said, actually, it's your school district. And we didn't think about this, but it's an added benefit. You know, one of the things that Paragould is growing at about 1.5. We're averaging a new citizen, 3 new citizens every 2 days. So we're growing at 1.5 people per day, and those people have to have homes. The main thing, the number one thing that people look at when they look to consider moving to a community is a school district. And as city leaders, there's not just a whole lot that we can do to help our local schools. The second thing that people look at usually is crime and safety. That is something that we can control, but the school districts are almost out of our control. But when you look at this spreadsheet, you can see that those lots were essentially bringing in, I think, about $45 per lot for our school district. The new assessed value of those homes were built at $175,000. The new revenue from property taxes to our school district is $50,000. This is actually, I believe, on 30-something homes. We're about to break ground on our 50th home, so these numbers need to be updated. I would say that the revenue is over $60,000 a year to our school district. The great thing about that is that's every year. It's not a one-time thing. So that's the salary of a teacher. Additionally, for every student that moves into one of these 50 homes, that student is worth over $8,000 to the school district. So the benefits to the school district are really hard to quantify, just because it's hard for us to tell exactly how many students moved into these houses, but we know that it's been a huge win for our schools. The next slide is going to talk about one of the things that we also saw was we talked about amenities earlier, and we had in the middle of our North End district, we had what everyone called the green apartments. They were essentially, unfortunately, they were a landmark in our city. Can we go to that next slide? So you can see the green apartments. They were vacant. They were just sitting there. They had been for sale for a few years. The gentleman didn't have any luck selling it, so the land bank actually purchased this. This is a midpoint between downtown and the park that is on the other end. So now we have a small area here. It ended up being about a half an acre. Right behind this, you can see the house in the background that has a red roof there. That was owned by the Coy family. The Coy family had raised their kids there, and they had like 9 children, and all the kids got together. They reached out to the city and said, look, we hear you're going to put a park in. We want to donate the house, and the house was dilapidated, needed to come down, and the two parcels that go with it. We want to expand Coy Park. So the next slide will show the latest thing that is coming to the North End district, the Kiwanis Club. It kind of goes back to that idea of getting people to do it with you. We have a saying in Paragould that we do things with people, not to people. Our economic development arm gave $20,000 toward the development of this park. The Land Bank Commission set aside $20,000. The Kiwanis Club gave nearly $40,000 for this bank shot court. We've had private donations, and I believe that we have $130,000 or $140,000 of private money that has been donated. And there's a new pocket park coming to the North End district. So the next slide will kind of show you, we talked about the 8 Mile Creek Trail. This is one of the amenities that goes right through the heart of the North End district. It connects the park, Harmon Park, that's on the north end of the North End district. It also connects to Coy Park, and then it connects all the way up to City Hall, and connects from City Hall either in one direction to downtown or back to that junior high and high school that I spoke of earlier. So now all those residents that live in the North End or close to the North End can access their school. They can get to the junior high or the high school either on a bike lane down our main thoroughfare, Court Street, or down the 8 Mile Creek Trail. So accessibility to our parks and our school districts was a big deal. The next slide will kind of show you guys some before and afters. I think there are five slides. This slide here, these 2 homes were actually part of that 17 lot purchase. There were 2 homes on 17. There were 3 homes on 17 of those 17 lots. The houses were in pretty bad shape. They were condemned by the city, so that when we sold them at auction, the builders knew that they had to tear those structures down. And you'll see below some of the homes that have been built. I think the next 3 slides will just show some of the progress. You'll also see on the road, that's a prime example of a before and after. This house here is kind of, the last 2 are both kind of special to me, because both of those homes recently sold to first-time home owners. This gentleman was actually renting a house on Court Street, and this has become his first house. And then the house behind it was actually just purchased by a young family that had 2 kids. And the first day of school, they went out in front of their new home with their keys and their kids' first day of school. And that was very heartwarming for the land bank, because we know those 2 kids are going to our schools now. So we talked about that. They're first time homeowners. And they were really excited to be able to own their own home and to live in a neighborhood where they can raise their kids. This is essentially kind of an updated photo of the first slide where the homes were that we had torn down. And as you can see, there are 5 homes in a row. And what you can't see is 2 more that are being built on this end of that bottom slide. So we've had a lot of success in just revitalization, and these homes are, in the $175,000 to $200,000 price point. Just another example of this is actually the street over. One of the things that that next slide shows the North End banners. So one of the things that we really wanted to do was we wanted to brand our neighborhoods. You've essentially gone in to our overlay districts. We've essentially established new neighborhoods. So we wanted them to really feel like a neighborhood. So we put up these banners all over the North End district and the Midtown district, so that when you come into these overlay districts, you realize that kind of things have changed. You're in an area. One of the things that we have done is our economic development arm has agreed to purchase a magnolia tree for every home that's been built. So those 50 homes that have been built, they all have a magnolia tree in front. And you can see the magnolia leaves on the banner. We really wanted people to feel like this was a neighborhood. The next slide will show an arch that we built. We recently had a 5K where we had about 300 people run we had a 5K, a 10K, and a half marathon, and they all went through the North End district. And you can see them running down the street. Even though there's a trail there, they decided to run in the street that day. But they're running underneath that North End arch. And that really, as you're coming into the North End district, you realize, oh, I'm coming into a new neighborhood. So our next efforts are going to be in the Midtown area that we talked about earlier. We really have, we've started with, we've hung up these Midtown banner signs that you see on the right side of the screen. We put up about 50 of those banners through our Midtown area. We've been working on connectability with sidewalks, curb and gutter, and making sure drainage has been taken care of. And we're excited to be jumping out on the Midtown area next. So my final slide, we put this in, and I feel like this really, it kind of speaks to a lot of what we do in Paragould. And it says, you can tell where a city's heart is by where its budget lands. And, we can talk a little bit, Doug, if you'd like me to. I've got some stats real quick on the expenditures and revenue, if that's been a question. But we feel like this is a worthwhile investment, and that's why the council and the Land Bank Commission has doubled down on their efforts and really put their money where their mouth is, as far as trying to create affordable housing and redevelopment in these areas.
Yeah, while your mic is live, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, that was kind of going to be my follow-up question. If a municipality, if a community wanted to establish a land bank, kind of what you kind of covered the outreach with your master plan, your 20-year vision. You covered some of the governance, but what is that real commitment in taking that next step and getting that land bank established?
Sure. So the first year, we had a little bit, it was kind of an uphill battle, as far as we didn't know exactly what to ask for. So the first year, the council appropriated $250,000. That was in 24. In 25 and 26, they appropriated $400,000 each year. However, we didn't spend all of those funds. In the past 3 years, we have spent $780,000. We have received $190 in auction proceeds. So our out-of-pocket cost has been $590,000. 2/3 of those investments and expenditures have been in street overlays, drainage work, paving alleys, infrastructure, as far as just lighting and that sort of stuff. So really, it's been probably less than $200,000 out of pocket over the past 3 years. And with that investment, we've seen not only have we seen the 50 homes that have been built in this area, but we've also seen people. I went for a walk on the trail the other day, and there was a lady out in front of her house, and her and her neighbor were together painting their front porches and had put up a picket fence. So you're seeing a lot of community pride come back into this area. So we feel like really the taxes that we talked about that are going to the school has really offset any expenditures that we've had.
Yeah, that's terrific. I mean, just some simple round math, $200,000, for 50 homes at, $4,000 a piece of investment to really breathe new life back into these communities.
Sure.
Congratulations. It's really inspiring. James, to go back to you briefly, for a community that's interested in starting a community land trust, similar question that I asked the mayor, kind of what are the conditions that make a CLT most likely to succeed, and what are some signs that a community may not be ready for one?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a question that we are often tasked with helping answer when we work with folks that reach out to us about starting a community land trust. And we try to take a pretty holistic view. We think about the ecosystem locally. What are the different ingredients you need for something like this to be successful? We think about is there funding or capital, whether that's private or philanthropic or public, that can support development or acquisition. Are there policies that are favorable or on the opposite end of the spectrum, policies that might obstruct a community land trust? Taxation is a huge issue with land trusts. If you're dealing with below market home sales, ideally you have equitable taxation that treats those home sales as what they are, right? You're selling a home that's worth 500,000 on the market for 200,000 that should be taxed at 200,000 ideally, so that home buyer or homeowner isn't dealing with a major burden. So understanding if that policy doesn't already exist, if there's at least some political openness to thinking about that kind of reform. You need capacity, community land trusts. A lot of them do partner, as I talked about with the example in Colorado. They do partner with housing development entities, developers, community development corporations to build homes. You need to figure out who's going to be doing that. Are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to partner? Does the city, municipality have that capacity? And then the stewardship side is a key part. Who's actually going to stay with those homes and support those homeowners generation after generation? That's a big difference between land trust home ownership and other sort of affordable home ownership. Making sure that the upfront investment in subsidy and repairs, home construction, et cetera, is monitored and stays in the land and doesn't escape through someone not catching a deed restriction or the ground lease resale restriction. So you need all those ingredients, ideally at least a couple of those, and really the first ingredient of all is there a willingness? Is there genuine excitement or enthusiasm? Is this identified as a solution to some of the problems being addressed? And can you build the coalition to move all these different pieces?
That's great. Great. Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
We've had a few questions come in on the Q&A function. The first one I think it says me and you, Mayor Agee. And I hadn't really thought about this angle, but how might land trusts, perhaps land banks, intersect with issue 3 on the ballot this November? This is the TIF ballot measure that we'll vote on here in Arkansas. I can offer my uneducated guess, but I would welcome your thoughts too, Mayor, if you have any. My thought is that would be up to those creating the district, and those that are determining the uses of those funds in that TIF district, whether they would want to dedicate a portion of that funding, for an endeavor like this. I think there is a fair amount of flexibility in what those can be used for, but that is not an angle that I had thought of in preparation for this presentation today. But Mayor, if you have any thoughts, I'd welcome them.
I agree 100% with you. It is an angle that we have discussed on the municipal league side. I know that it's, we've had quite a few presentations from different legislators and the people kind of behind issue 3, and they feel like this is a key piece of the puzzle as far as the housing, trying to get housing into place. That issue 3 could be, if that's what a community wanted to do when they set the district up, they could definitely use that for affordable housing.
That's great. Well, just another reason. I'm not allowed to tell you to go vote for it, but another reason to support it.
And
Go
we've
ahead,
seen
James.
that, and I would just to jump in to say, like, I was telling Duke, I was trying to research like issue 3, what's eligible uses while we were having this conversation. And there's definitely examples of CLTs, at least around the country, that take advantage of local funding sources. But to both the points that were made, it's another tool in the toolkit for local economic development. Anytime you can find a new revenue source, local government, those are hard to come by. So this is one way to do that, and it's just a matter of how you want to prioritize using those resources.
That's great. Thanks for adding that, James. Another question for the mayor regarding kind of your example of a lot selling for $9,000 versus neighboring lots for 3 or 4 times that. Does that create, kind of a market manipulation dynamic where, comps may not live up to, those expectations of neighboring lots? I think I have an answer for it as well, but I'd love you to weigh in on that.
Yeah, so I should have clarified. The lots that are bringing $30,000-$40,000 are those lots that are in a new subdivision that I spoke of, where a developer has to go out onto a 20-acre parcel and put in the sewer and all that. These lots are actually, they were in a dilapidated area, so these builders were taking a risk. That's why the lower price. Now, I will say that our first auction, the average price was $9,000. Our last 2 were 12 and 15,000. So you're seeing those lot prices come up. We have an auction on one piece of property coming up September 1st. And yesterday we had a land bank meeting, and I asked the chairman, I said, what do you think? And he's the builder. And I asked him, I said, what do you think that lot's going to bring? And he said 20 to 25. So we're seeing,
Wow.
Now it's in the midtown where the nicer homes are. So it's going to bring a little bit more. But you're seeing that kind of come up, those prices come up. So, what it was at first, especially, was there was some hesitancy from those builders on, is this going to work? And once they've seen that it's going to work, they're more likely to run that price up a little higher. Those homes that were near these areas, you're talking about $175,000 to $200,000 home that's being built, and I would say the average home price in that area before this was in the $40,000 to $60,000 range.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and issue 3 has been brought up. I mean, I think this is where there are some parallels in that it is the value of the land is, compressed and has little, tax revenue, little use in its current state. So this is a way to bring it back to life. James, there's a question about, Grounded Solutions having white papers or resources. Can you direct our attendees to where they can learn more?
Yeah, I was actually about to put that in the chat. So we have a resource library. I don't know exactly what kind of white paper you're looking for, but the resource library, we've recently updated it. You can search for different topics. We have a great resource on starting CLTs, what kind of questions you might be asking. I think we have resources on land banking as well. So I'll put the link. So I answered it. So I guess that's the link in the answer. And then specifically, if you're interested in like what are community land trusts doing generally, if you want to get a good sense of what they look like, what they're up to, we do a census periodically. We did one a few years ago. I can send the link to that as well. And there's some good there's an article in Shelter Force that gives a good sort of summary of that research.
And James, we can include this in our follow-up. Everyone who attended today will get a follow-up email from us with a link to the recording of this, and we can include some of those resources and work with you to get those put in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I make one quick comment from the last question too? Because this question comes up a lot. in the CLT space too. There's the concern about, okay, you're selling these homes below market value. Is that going to harm nearby property values? Are we going to be compared to this subsidized house when it's sold? And I think two things on that. One is when appraisal methodology accounts for these types of things. So a below market sale like this shouldn't even be included in a comp analysis. So that's one thing. And I don't know if I think there's some parallel there with land bank sales. Like
Mhm.
if you're doing an appraisal or study of land values in the area, they should be separating out those land bank sales and sort of treating them separately when they do that value analysis. But to Mayor Agee's point, uh, those homes or those parcels, are actually dragging down property values before the land bank gets a hold of them. So
Right.
a lot of studies have been done to look at the value of homes proximate to land bank parcels, and they show repeatedly after the land bank acquires and redevelops those parcels, the nearby property values do tend to actually go up, even if those parcels themselves are sold below market. So it's about the sort of economic development and value increase and increasing the tax base, all those things that have been successful in Paragould. So two pieces of that.
That's great. Mayor, I'd love to give you one last opportunity to share anything maybe that was not teased out through a question or any area that you'd like to share a little more on.
I just wanted to say that, we talked earlier about how when you talked about blight being statewide, and this is a statewide issue. So if there is anyone, and we've had a lot of people from all over the state come to Paragould. I won't mention the specific cities, but we've had 5 or 6 in-person visits and phone calls. You can reach out to me if anyone has any questions and would like to dive deeper. There's a lot that we didn't cover. It's probably a half-day seminar if you really want to know the truth. But we're happy. We want to share this idea. We think it's a great tool, and we'll be happy to help any other community around the state. So please feel free to reach out. We'll jump on a Zoom or meet you in person and take you through it and show it to you firsthand. Whatever we can do to help another city, we're always here.
Mayor, that's I know you mean it, and I really appreciate you taking time today to share the great work that's going on. Similar kind of final question, James. Any final or closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, one, I just appreciated being invited to the conversation, and I learned a lot about what the great work you're doing in Paragould, and I think it's a great example of the might of local government and really bringing practical solutions to bear. So that was great. And yeah, similar, just offer to anyone here if you want to learn more about our work, if you want to explore lasting affordable housing solutions. We have a lot of different resources and ways to get help from just asking us a question. We make time to answer those questions. We have a membership is an easy way to join, and then we do technical assistance. So yeah, we'd love to hear more or do some more work in Arkansas. And I know I don't work for Center for Community Progress, but the the question about working and learn more about these types of land banking models and revitalizing vacant land. They do have their conference coming up in a month. It's in Pittsburgh. It might be kind of short notice for folks, but yeah, the Reclaiming Vacant Properties Conference. I attended that in Atlanta like 7 years ago, and it was great. Really learned a lot. Met a lot of local housing staff, people working on code enforcement and blight reduction and all that. So great way to learn and meet people.
Well, and I shared on our pre-call, James, but I'm happy to share, with the broader group. Groundwork has been working with Center for Community Progress
Right.
on some possible legislation to come in January. They've been very active in the Pine Bluff region, working with the city of Pine Bluff directly on kind of helping them think about a land bank or whether it's appropriate for them to establish there. So they're active in the state and have been a wonderful resource for us. Just two things, kind of on the housekeeping front. I apologize for my opening. I was notified I did not advance the slides, so sorry if what I was saying was a little disconnected from what's on the screen, but I think I got it worked out. Please save October 1st on your calendar. We're thrilled to just this week have announced that we're going to hold the Natural State Housing Summit in Little Rock on October 1st. We have a wonderful lineup. speakers. Groundwork at that time is going to dig into some of the legislation that we're working on in the coming legislative session. Really would love to have each and every one of you join us that day. Before that, we're hosting another webinar next month. Again, kind of thinking about the feedback we've received across the state. This one's going to be focused on modular housing, kind of what needs to be done to bring modular to our state in a more meaningful way. Audra Butler, the director of Rural Housing for Communities Unlimited, who I saw was on the call today, is going to moderate that one. She's going to highlight the work that's going on in Pine Bluff that Codney Washington is leading. And then we're going to bring in Dean Dalbit, who is an architect, designs modular units that are actually being built in Chaffee County in Buena Vista, Colorado. And really excited about that one. We think modular has a lot of promise for rural Arkansas, and excited to bring that to you. With that, here's the Groundwork team's contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Let us know if you have any thoughts or concerns or want to collaborate or just need to pick around some ideas. We're always here to support that work. And really appreciate everyone taking the time. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, James. And hope to see you all at the next webinar in September. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.